The Consulting Success podcast is powered by the Clarity Coaching Program. If you'd like to work directly with the Consulting Success team and receive personal coaching and support to optimize and grow your consulting business, marketing, and revenue, visit consultingsuccess.com to find out more and apply.
Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business. Hey everyone, it's Michael Zapersky here, and today I'm with Renée Smith. Renée, welcome.
Thank you, Michael. It's so great to be with you.
Yeah, so Renée, you are the founder and CEO of A Human Workplace. You have nearly 2 decades of experience providing organization development services to public, private, nonprofit organizations. You write, you research, you teach, you speak at many different conferences and events. I think where I'd love to start today's conversation is really, what do you mean when you say kind of make work more human? I'm just wondering what happens to a business or an organization when they're able to kind of make work more human. So first, if you could kind of define that, and then once you embrace that concept, how does it actually play out within an organization?
Yeah. So to define that best, I think it's helpful to go back to the genesis of this body of work. And I've done a lot, as my bio indicates, like a lot of different kinds of organization development consulting over the years. But when I was at the Department of Enterprise Services in the state of Washington as an internal practitioner, directing organization development and lean continuous improvement work, we were doing all this culture work and trying to create an environment where employees would step up and share their ideas and point out problems and have great conversations about how to make work better for Washingtonians, how to make the processes and things better for the people that they served. And in the process of doing this, I had this pivotal conversation with the CEO of my organization, the executive director, Chris Liu, who was a seasoned leader and 40 years in the private sector, and then he came to government. And I asked him, so, okay, Chris, what do you think is the most important job of a leader? And he immediately answered without hesitation to eliminate fear from the workplace. And that was just like music to my ears and made complete sense to me. It resonated as something that I had seen him try to do and tried to lead that way and encouraged us as his executive team to lead that way. And I knew that when we'd done that well, really good things had happened. And when we'd not done that so well, not such good things. Mm. And so it made complete sense. And it also only seemed like half the story, because it seemed like if we're decreasing fear, then something else is taking its place. And I came to the conclusion and to the deep belief that that thing is love. That fear and love are these two primary human experiences that we have. All of the difficulties and negativity that we experience in life has its roots in fear, and all the positive stems from love. And I got really clear for myself on that, studied and came to understand the neurophysiology of both fear and love and how those two constructs and practices and experiences play out in the workplace, and came to understand that we are at our best as human beings when we essentially feel cared about, that we belong, that we matter, that we can contribute, that we can be who we really are and not pretend we're something else. When we can embody our full humanity, and when we welcome others to do that, when we are human-centered, when we create a human workplace, a loving workplace, all bets are off. Like, teams excel and step in and shine and meet hard challenges and do incredible things together. So that's what I mean by that. Yeah.
So let's zoom into that a bit more, because I want to make this very tangible for everyone. Could you provide an example or two of what fear might look like in an organization? How does it kind of manifest itself? What would somebody be able to see or to sense if fear was present?
Yeah. So if fear is present, what people will see or sense, and what I think, first of all, just in saying those words, I would just invite everyone to pause and think about a time when they felt afraid at work. And you could think about that too. And the thing is that we all have these experiences. And I don't mean times when we felt uncomfortable, like, I've got this new challenge, I've got to meet this moment. That's a good, healthy kind of fear. But instead, a time when we felt betrayed, when we're facing change and no one was providing good guidance about how to navigate that change or what expectations were or how to be successful in that change. When maybe we were shamed or publicly humiliated or when we faced a personal crisis and we weren't supported, right? Another example might be if we faced harassment or discrimination or microaggressions. All of those are experiences that people tell me, types of experiences, and the research that I've done, interviewing people about their experiences that they describe as being the kinds of fears that they've experienced. And when people have those experiences, they shut down, they pull back, they withhold. When a volunteer is needed for something, they don't raise their hand. When we're trying to engage to figure out what's really going on, no one's going to tell because it's not safe enough to tell, right? Those are the kinds of things.
How do you feel this applies to, let's say, the solo consultant or the small consulting firm owner? I mean, is this a concept that is really only applicable to larger organizations that have tens, hundreds, thousands of employees? Or in your experience, can this also have an impact if it's just one person, or let's say a group of 2, 3, 4, 5, very small firm?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that anytime there are human beings interacting together, the potential for fear or for love is there. And so it applies whether or not we're in a large organization and structure that has many day-to-day opportunities for interaction, or our interactions are with partners or with customers or with suppliers or others, maybe subcontractors that are part of our firm. Those same dynamics are there. The label on the relationship is slightly different, but the potential is there for both sides.
I think that's a really important point that you're making, because for every consultant, whether you're a solo consultant or you have a team of 5, 10, 50 people, you're still considered a smaller kind of firm in the scheme of things. But you definitely do have interactions with clients, right? Where at times you might be fearful of the relationship or what's the dynamic inside that relationship. And then, as you pointed out, even if you don't have full-time employees or part-time employees, you might work with freelancers, contractors, or other vendors to support your clients. How does this play out? I mean, what is the opportunity there for, let's say, the consultant to engage in a more effective, healthier way with their clients? Like, how do you actually start to put some of these ideas into practice to remove fear and to create more love so that you can have just a stronger relationship and a better overall outcome?
Yeah. So before I go there, I want to point out, I think that there's a parallel, having been both an external consultant, now an external consultant with all the dynamics that are involved with that. We have a team of affiliates around the world, but still it's me in my house today, right? But also having been an internal consultant, an employee of an organization doing very similar functions for internal clients. The dynamic is very much the same. And the situations that I would run into potentially with leaders or with those I was trying to serve with teams is not that different when I see them day to day and we park in the same parking lot and we're in the same building and I'm maybe on different floors or whatever, than a client that I am navigating a relationship with. It might be week to week, but still we could have, as Bob Sutton would put it, the leader, or we could have a caring, loving human leader who is asking for our services in either setting. And the dynamics, though, I mean, there's some nuances. Obviously, when I'm self-employed, it can feel like, gosh, do I have to take this? Do I have to sort of put up with this because I need the work? I mean, I think that's the dynamic that we deal with a lot, not just around fear or love, but do I believe in this work? Am I comfortable with what's happening here?
I think that's really important. So I appreciate you doing that. What would be the first step for somebody? I mean, most people listening to this are consultants, and they might be solo, they might be a small firm owner, but they're going to definitely be dealing with clients. They're going to be dealing with contractors or team members. What would be the first step? Like, is there a way to even gauge, is our organization, are the relationships that I have, is fear present or is there love? Like, how do they know whether they need to actually spend time exploring this or not?
Yeah. So I think that can be gauged a few different ways. One is just a gut check. And I think all of this has to begin with us getting clear with ourselves about how fear has played out for us and the impacts that that's had on us. It only takes a little bit of reflecting on when have I experienced fear and how did that impact me and my work and my physical body and my personal life and my mental health, my performance, and how has feeling some version of love, respect, trust, care, kindness, empathy, inclusion, appreciation, how has that impacted me? And so it starts with getting clear for ourselves. And then as far as understanding really what's happening with the teams that we're working with, let's say a team of affiliates perhaps, and wanting to know, like, are they experiencing me as a loving leader? What are we creating together? That hopefully can begin with a conversation about that, with a statement of a commitment. I want to be a loving, human-centered leader. I want us to be this kind of team. I'm aware that my experience might not be your experience. And I think that's particularly important as the more diverse a team is, understanding that the experience that I have as a cisgender white middle-aged woman is not necessarily, and it's not even not necessarily, it's not the same as a younger woman of color, or a man of color, or a LGBTQ person. Like, there are lots of different experiences that people are having. And so we can't even enter that moment of conversation without acknowledging we are all having different experiences. I care about your experience. I want it to be this way. I would value an honest conversation, to know, how are you experiencing what we're creating together? There's also, I think, Amy Edmondson's psychological safety short, I think it's a 7-question rating, could be also a sort of a good point to like get some data and have a conversation and explore. So those are a few ways.
And so once you do that, I think that conversation is so important. I've really found this as well, over the years as we've been building our team pretty consistently and kind of at a accelerating pace more recently. So it's been a lot of fun, a lot going on, which is exciting. But just the importance of having that open dialogue with team members, showing them that you care, asking them questions, I think is a really good place to start. So let's say you have that initial conversation. What happens next? If you were to give them just a couple of pieces of advice, where to begin? How can you try and remove fear from that organization? Because I can very clearly see that benefit. If people are full of fear, they're not going to take action. If they're not taking action, they're not going to create results. They're not going to collaborate. They're not going to be as productive. So the benefits of having people feeling safe, feeling loved, feeling cared for, it's a no-brainer to me, right? It just makes complete sense. So let's say that people buy into that as well. They're excited by that. What would be maybe 2 or 3 things that you would recommend that people could do to remove fear in their environment and create more love, as you call it, so that they can get the results and the outcomes that they really want?
Yeah. So there are 3 things that people described in my research that created more loving workplaces. And I should say that when I asked people, this is what I did. I set up social qualitative research project, interviewed people about their stories of fear and love. The love stories, sometimes people would say, I felt loved when this happened, and they would use the L word, right? Other people would say something like, I wouldn't use the word love, but I want to tell you about a time when I felt respect or trust or kindness. So they would basically giving the operational definition of what love looks like in what all the kind of different permutations of being cared about are in for a workplace. And so when I asked them that, the stories that I got back had like 3 basic types. One was, my leader cares about me as a person. My leader took an interest in me. I was respected and trusted for who I am. I'm acknowledged. I'm trusted to innovate. They know how I want to learn and grow and give me those opportunities, those kinds of things. So just like paying attention, getting to know people, who they are, and then lining up opportunities for people to live into that and letting go and taking risks. Then sometimes it is like, okay, I'm going to let this person step into this space, and maybe they haven't done that before. And that can feel more high stakes when it's just us and a handful of people. But that's where beautiful things happen. The second kind of love story that people describe, as they say, my team is like a healthy, loving family. And I think this is a really interesting one for those of us who are solopreneurs or who have affiliates that are kind of in a looser network that we work with sometimes, and we work with other people sometimes. And yet still, we have the opportunity to create that sense of strong belonging and connection and commitment to each other and trust. When people say we're like a healthy, loving family, they really mean like we have each other's backs. We're there for each other. We cover and take care of things when someone has to be away. They talk about if there's a problem or a challenge, that can kind of be thrown down and people can circle that and give their ideas and have really good, healthy disagreements. So it's creating that environment where that is welcomed and supported. I would say that for my own team, we're now upwards of 30 global affiliates and adding a few more here in this next month. And many of them I have never met in person. because of COVID, because so many people have come around and like flocked to what we're doing during this time. And so it always kind of makes me laugh when I hear people being so worried about like, gosh, how are we going to build good, healthy connection and a sense of team and culture if we can't be in the same room together? And certainly I've missed that, but we have done that. We absolutely have these incredibly strong bonds of trust and care and respect and belonging. And then the third kind of love story that people tell, the third opportunity to create this environment is when the chips are down in someone's personal life. So stuff happens. We face difficulties and hardships. And certainly, gosh, we've all been in that this year. But there's divorce and there's illness and death in the family and other kinds of things that people go through. And if people are sort of told, yeah, we don't really want that on the team, or deal with that in your personal life and come to us like all cleaned up and tidy. Actually, we experience that as a betrayal of our humanity, to have to kind of pretend that things aren't happening. And so if we're able to and make the choice to be there for people in those hard moments, that creates an incredible sense of connection and trust and a sense of love.
Yeah, those are awesome. Thanks for sharing those three. I think many people will see themselves in parts of those, or see their relationships and interactions in parts of those. And hopefully for everyone with us right now, you're thinking about how can you apply one or two of those questions or concepts to the relationships that you have with your clients, with your team members, even in your personal relationships. I can see this being very powerful. I want to switch up a little bit here now, Renée, and have us look into and kind of explore your career, because you were working right in the public sector, and then you made this transition into the world of consulting. So you didn't just go from in the corporate world to consulting 100%. There was a bit of a transition. Can you kind of walk us through what were those stages, and when did you actually become a full-time consultant? Because I think you started 2017, and then there was a progression where actually 2020, so 3 years later, you actually went 100% into consulting. So what did that transition look like for you?
Yeah. So go back a little bit further, back to 2001, right after, as I was coming out of my training, I began to consult at that point. And so have some experience as sort of as a small solo doing local projects with nonprofits and small business, and eventually some corporate work too. And then went into employment for a time. I was at a university employed in organization development, not as a professor, but as a practitioner for the campus. And then went to state government. And I was at the Department of Enterprise Services. And as I said, leading organization development and continuous improvement and lean. And that was a really interesting role, actually, because we had services for our own agency. And then we also it was an entrepreneurial organization. So we had government to government consulting services that my team offered to any government anywhere. So it was fascinating to be have a consultancy from government to government.
While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early-stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early-stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months, so don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO.
So you're already getting your consulting kind of chops and experience while working within this organization.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I'd had some previous, but then in this sort of new incarnation, got to do some then. And that was mostly around our lean work. That was the primary focus. And in parallel to that, I had this epiphany moment about love and fear. And a friend who was in consulting, successful writer and entrepreneur, took a look at my work and said, "You are onto something important here." He said, "You need to get yourself a Squarespace site and you need to get on LinkedIn, just those two things, and start blogging and speaking and like just sharing about this." And he said, "It will happen." And so at this point, I was, again, employed within this government agency, but with a lot of latitude because of this government to government work to like explore this whole channel, this whole vein of work. It made sense to be a thought leader in this space, given what my work was there. And so I spent the next year doing that. And he was absolutely right. There's nothing like someone speaking about love in government to have, like, urge, stop the car. What did you just say? It was pretty captivating and created a lot of momentum.
What did you do, just to jump in for a minute, Renée? Like, a lot of people would say, "Oh yeah, I went on LinkedIn, I wrote some articles, I did some speaking." Like, when you look back kind of with the benefit of hindsight, out of all the things that you did, what do you think actually had the biggest benefit and kind of impact and result that actually helped to launch your business? Was it one of those things specifically, or just what do you think actually made the difference out of all those things?
Yeah. So first of all, the one good idea, as my mentor, Edie Seashore, has told me years ago, this one really clear good idea that I was deeply committed to and believed in. And then there was kind of an alchemy of, so I took all my data away to the beach, and then this like 5-day stint at the beach on Monterey, I like made sense of the data. I created my talk, which is still basically the talk that I created that week is still the basic talk that I give with some tweaks around the edges. And I wrote 8 blog posts. And that was like, it was just this huge leap forward. And so I had some consistency to be able to begin to put things out there and interact on that. And then the other thing that happened, and I think this comes from, I was in my early 50s, I'm 56 now. And so this was having lived a lot of different life and probably felt insecure at different points in life where I might have felt threatened or a little bit like, ooh, they're saying something that's sort of like my thing. There's this like worry that we have that we're not going to have it or bring it fast enough, or someone's going to kind of cut in on our thing. And I've had those early experiences of that. And this was so not that. What happened was people would like contact me and say, "Oh, you're bringing that into the world? Like, here's this thing that I'm saying. And I'm talking about kindness. I'm out here taking a stand for compassion," or on, all of these different aspects of love or diversity and inclusion. And so people saw themselves. And thankfully, I was in a place of being able to say, "Awesome, let's connect and let's join hands. And I want to amplify what you're doing." And so it was, I guess I would frame it as like a much more generous space to be in.
Mm. And when you say generous, is that because, Renée, that you weren't actually running the business full time? You weren't counting on income from consulting because you still had the job. And so you're much more in a open, collaborative, let's see how kind of things play out, not feeling the pressure that you have to generate a client right now. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, I think that definitely helped. And honestly, this year has its own trajectory, its own story, which I can share about, that has had me back on my heels a little bit. And because we went like so deep and heavy into a singular focus to respond to the pandemic, that I sort of had to come up for air and go, wait a second, you forgot what you're supposed to be doing, which is bringing this message forward. And it kind of had me wobble a little bit. And I've watched a lot of friends publish their books this year, which has been a joy and has had me like, I have something that I'm working on writing and I need to get on it, And so, yeah, there's both of that.
When you kind of mentioned that you kind of bouncing around a little bit, is it that main kind of core message around fear and really shifting that more to love in the workplace and treating people more like humans? Is it that you kind of veered away from that a little bit to support what was happening in COVID, or just without going too deep into it, because I want to cover a few other things with you as well. What happened there? Because I'm wondering, what is the lesson players might be able to take away from that and maybe able to catch themselves a little bit earlier as a warning sign before they actually go too far down that path?
Yeah. So just super quickly. So after the year in the agency doing this work, the governor's office said, we believe in what you're doing. We want you to bring this work to the governor's office and do it at a state level. They created a position for me as director of workplace transformation for the state of Washington. So my entire job was to help make state workplaces more loving and human. And so I did that until I got back from actually traveling internationally and speaking in 5 countries in 3 weeks, and came back in December of 19 and said, I think I need to step out. I think it's time. And so in December of 19, I set March 2nd, 2020 as my last day of work. And now, mind you, I'm like just outside Seattle, where like everything went down early and fast here with COVID.
Right.
And so March 3rd is my first day home working privately. By March 6th, it was clear I'm not going to New Zealand. I'm not going to Europe. Like none of this is happening and I need to pivot. And we had a whole community, though, developed already. And the immediate pivot was to begin to offer a virtual version of the in-person work that we'd been doing, which are human workplace gatherings, specifically focused on working alone together. And so a few colleagues and I kind of crafted this new gathering, and we were live by March 16th with our first virtual gathering and have hosted thousands of people this year with this very particular methodology. So that was like, I brought all the stuff of my career home and then put it all away in cupboards and in the attic and hit it and like focused on this one thing.
Right.
And because it was like the urgency and need of the moment. And then people came around and joined me to help with that one thing. I trained them to host, licensed people, like all of that took off. And then I had to like pause and think, wait a second, this isn't the only thing. This is just one thing. And there's another thing. There's a bigger thing here that will inform multiple things that we offer. So it wasn't at all like leaving behind the message. It was just focusing in on offering one product to deliver that message very specific to this time.
Well, and what's the difference? So you said that there was something else, something bigger, something maybe higher up that would inform the one offering. What is that?
Yeah. So I feel really strongly, and what I have heard from people, I mean, so in 2019, I spoke 100 times, literally to 100 audiences around the world. And the feedback that I get from doing that is, oh, I thought this was going to be woo-woo, bunnies and rainbows, squishy, like, I wasn't sure, but I get it now. You've made the business case for me about why this is important, and you've connected it to my own experience, and I get it. And I know deeply in my heart and soul that delivering that message is my primary job, and that everything else flows from that. And I have clients as well, the consulting clients who we're helping on this path in different ways. And I have a team of people who can help people on this path in different ways. But my primary job is to share that message. It's sort of the breaking through, interrupting business as usual thinking. And frankly, like letting people know your human instincts, especially that have like come so forward during COVID and during the racial reckoning, those are the right instincts. Follow those, right?
Renée, weren't you doing that? I mean, if you're speaking to thousands of people over the last 12 months or so, isn't that a way of sharing your message? Or do you see, is there something different between delivering that message in that gathering kind of structure as opposed to you giving talks or other ways of sharing? I just want to make the distinction of how you see those two different things.
Yeah. So what we were doing, and what we still do in gatherings, is very experiential. So whether it's working alone together, standing together for love and justice, or all these different permutations of helping people process the pandemic or be ready to move forward. We're talking a lot about forward to work now.
Right.
All of those are times when we bring people in, we welcome them. There's music, there's poetry, we do some breathing. Usually there's a tiny, tiny teaching, enough to just give people something. I like to call it one bite of the apple. I don't want to give people the whole dang bushel of apples to eat, but get one good bite of the apple and then taste it and chew it and swallow it and be nourished by it. And so there is that. And then we effectively use breakouts, trioed breakouts, for people to generously listen to each other and sharing in an uninterrupted fashion their processing of whatever the kind of the topic or question is. So that's very experiential. By the end, we want people to have experienced a bunch of well-being practices where they can take care of themselves and support their team with those. But that's not making the case. That's not bringing the business case for more love and less fear. And so that's the distinction.
Right. So that's more would be almost like the service that you would offer once the business case has been made. So you're speaking, the business case has been made. leaders are going, yeah, we need this. Okay, well, the way that you can then help them to have that experience is then through these gatherings. And so each of these gatherings, these are paid gatherings, like each participant will pay to be there. Is that how it works? Or what's the kind of the pricing structure on it?
So we've offered a bunch free this year. And part of it, we did a lot to just generously build community and help take care of people this last year. And then organizations sponsor and pay for those internally as well. So, and the same methodology sort of pivots from COVID processing to the cultural values that matter to your organization. So helping people explore, I like to talk about it as discovering and practicing what it is to be human at work in terms of your cultural values. So if you say you're about creativity, then let's experience creativity together. If you say you're about kindness or compassion, then let's experience those qualities together. And I really found that it's been important also to kind of help people, and sometimes it's our HR leaders, to distinguish and understand that when we say we're about something, we put stakes in the ground about certain values, those need to show up in our policies and our processes and the way that we formally do things as an organization. Mm-hmm. And so we've got to take those and apply and weave them in and make sure that our hiring process, for example, is an excellent example of who we say that we are. Or the way that we meet is a good example of who we say we are. But at the same time, on the other side, there are all these little moments that matter to people. When I come in and something's happened, something great's happened, something terrible has happened, professionally or personally, whatever the something has happened, how we care for each other in those moments, how we help people, as my friend Patty Beach coined the term shuva, how we help people feel seen, heard, understood, valued, and appreciated. We shuva them, right? That it's in both the policy and process stuff, but also in those moments that matter as human beings.
So speaking of process, just to understand, so it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, feel free to jump in, on the front end of kind of your marketing, your sales process, there's a lot of content that goes out. So articles, LinkedIn, speaking, that then results in people reaching out to you saying, hey, this really resonated. Can you help us with it? Then you'll send off a proposal, have a conversation. That leads then to doing either one-to-one consulting or kind of with their organization or doing these gatherings. And those are the paid engagements. Is that correct, or anything else that I'm missing there?
That's correct. Yeah. So there's gatherings, whether it's about COVID or about cultural work. So kind of thinking about the forward to work version of this now is reconnecting with care. So helping people process and reconnect and being ready to set down things and heal from the trauma that has been experienced. So they're ready to have the conversation about back to the office or forward to work and whatever permutation they're going to be in. And then it's understanding, sort of discovering, what do customers want now? What do employees want now?
And so are these all through gatherings or workshops, or how does that work?
Yeah, so there would be different kinds of workshop sessions. The gathering format is particular to exploring and discovering in a particular way. But then, we have sort of all the kind of open space and connecting people in different kinds of ways creatively. Our work is pretty creative and adaptive. And so there would be workshops to discover what people need and want now, and actually to re-examine our values. So it's sort of a strategy moment that we have. And then designing then, what is this new workplace going to be like? And frankly, designing our culture. So as I was saying earlier, this idea that how we're going to create culture now unless we're in person. And I get that, that's all maybe we've seen. But it is totally possible. And I would liken it to sort of an Apollo 13 moment. Apollo 13, the capsule was designed for 2 astronauts to come home, not 3. And NASA had to dump all the stuff on a table, if you remember the movie and the story, dump all the things on the table that the astronauts had in that capsule. And from all those things on the table, they had to assemble and create an oxygen cleanser, if I remember right, to get 3 astronauts home. Right? That was their design challenge. And we have a similar design challenge. So after we've understood what customers want now, it's probably not the same exactly as it was before. What employees want now, we know that's not the same as it was before. And what we value now has probably shifted. So we need to dump all of that on the proverbial table and grasp within these bounds, what can we do with this to create the culture that's going to get us the results that we want? And that's true whether we have an affiliate team or we're in a corporation. And then the last piece is collaboratively planning. I'm a big advocate for collaborative planning.
You mentioned the affiliates several times, and I know we have a few minutes left here before wrapping up. I want to just understand, what does that look like? You said, I think 30 or so affiliates. Are these people that have paid, like, do they pay an annual licensing fee to access your body of work? Or what does this look like, and why have you gone down that path? But maybe to start off, what does the affiliate relationship look like with these 30 or so people?
Yeah. So the affiliates that came forward last year, sort of, I would call them our pioneer affiliates, because frankly, I was just fresh, like weeks into full-time work, and had not even had a chance really to say, here's how we're going to do this thing. Here's the business model. It's sort of more just like I was plunged into it, and suddenly had people saying, these were organization development professionals who I knew were trained and had a baseline set of skills. And some of them I had relationships with, some of them I would meet and we would talk. And frankly, it was me discerning whether they align up with who we are and what we believe in. And so with that then discernment, this first group were kind of willing to go on this journey with me that was messy and ambiguous and ill-defined. And so we worked to create definition out of that. And what I put in place, we trained that initial group in how to host gatherings. And they became both affiliates available for work, and then they became licensed as well so that they could use this method in their own practice if they chose to. And so we priced it like bargain basement low for that initial group, and they could trade in kind too. So if you remember back more than a year ago, we didn't know where our money was coming from or how, if there was going to be work for us.
Yeah.
And so I felt like if people could, then they could pay. That's great. But just as much valued other kinds of contributions that they made to the community.
And knowing what you know now, and based on where the world is, so let's just say we're certainly not past COVID, but we're in a better place at the time of this recording than we were a year ago. What would the structure be? Is it people would pay to go through that kind of training and licensing and learning the body of work, and then they would pay an ongoing annual fee or a revenue share percentage of what they bring in? How are you kind of currently thinking about the model, and what would you recommend if somebody was thinking about doing something similar?
I don't know if I can go anywhere near recommending, because every situation is so different. But I will say, we've been grappling, and a part of my question this year has been, what is it? What is this, right? Because it was so much emergent and suddenly a thing, and I had to sort of sort through and just figure that out. What's becoming clear is that we have some folks that have joined because they are looking for business opportunities and subcontracting opportunities. And with that group, some fee for training and for affiliation upfront is part of the model. There are others who have joined who wanted to learn to host and to take the product into their own community, and the hosting fee applies to that. And frankly, we have this other set of folks who are employed, who are not really consultants, but who have come forward and become part of this internal, we've called it a community of practice. I'm getting ready to call it a community of action, but this community who are working for cities and school districts and in companies, but who are sort of in the inner circle, if you will, who I think are going to be part of an advisory board. And so kind of sorting through, why are people here? What are they getting? What surprised me and been beautiful is just how much they have loved being together, how much they've loved and found their way to each other, and have valued the community itself. And as we've developed together in those relationships, that's just strengthened the place that we can consult from.
Got it. So 2 rapid fire questions here before we wrap up. Well, actually, there'll be 3. The last one will be very easy. The first is best book you've read or listened to in the last 6 months.
Okay. My go-to book is, and now I'm going to freak out and not remember it.
What's the topic?
It's about love. And I'm just having a 56-year-old moment.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you then. So I'm going to ask you the second question is your most powerful daily habit, the one thing that you do every day that you feel is really integral to your success, your productivity, your happiness.
Before the pandemic hit, I decided to sell my house and find a place that's nurtured my soul to live. And I rent a little cottage by the beach. And so my one habit that nurtures me to this work is to go down and look at the water. Just being in that space. I'm just killing myself that I cannot remember the name of this book.
You can let me know after, and we'll keep this as suspense for everybody joining us. We will have that resource in the show notes. And so the other thing that I would encourage you all to do is if you'd like to learn what that book is, then you can reach out to Renée. And so this was actually my third and final question for today, Renée. But first of all, thank you so much for coming on and sharing a bit of your story and the work that you're doing. It's clearly about making a dent in the world, making the world a better place. And so I think that's just fantastic. I want to applaud you on that. But where should people go to learn more about you and your work?
Yeah, they can go to makeworkmorehuman.com or to ahumanworkplace.com. And they can reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to folks. My email is Renée, R-E-N-E, Renée at makeworkmorehuman.com. And the book, here it is.
There we go.
A General Theory of Love.
All right. So A General Theory of Love. We'll have that linked in the show notes as well. Renée, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.